amigos, we're back and we're ready to talk about electricity today and do some really cool experiments. So yesterday we talked about energy and we talked about how our body takes in energy through food and uses energy by moving, right? And then we give energy to other things by using our own energy and moving other things. We talked about magnets and how the north and south pole of a magnet are attracted to one another, and if you put a north and a north pole together, they repel. I wanted to show you one really cool experiment. I couldn't find this yesterday, but I found it. And so when I have this train here, this train engine, and it has a magnet on the end, and this is the north pole and this is the south pole of the caboose. When I put them both together, they connect. But when I put the north and the north pole together, they won't connect. It just chases it and moves it, but they repel each other, so they move. So I wanted to show you that really nifty-diffy trick with magnets that I had wanted to show you yesterday. Anyway, so today we're going to start talking about electricity, and we're going to do some really cool experiments. Before we do that, I'm going to read you this book called Charged Up, and we're going to learn about some of the different elements of electricity and how electricity powers our world, our houses, our school, and even the street lights out front. So let's read Charged Up, The Story of Electricity. It's by Jackie Bailey and Matthew Lilly. The publisher is Picture Window Books. Look at that light bulb. It's using electricity. We're going to see how that works. It was a bright and sunny morning, but the weather forecast said there was a storm on the way. Thick gray clouds rolled into view, and by noon there wasn't a patch of blue sky to be seen. The sky grew dark and gloomy, and in the town, lights went on in the stores and the offices, and drivers turned on their headlights. Bing! Excuse me. People turned on lights at home too, and then they continued doing what they were doing, like cooking meals and cleaning the carpets and playing computer games. So the power that was making all of the lights in the ovens and computers work was electricity. And electricity travels through wires. It flows along them in much the same way that water flows through pipes. The flow of electricity is called a current. Remember we talked about currents when we learned about the Gulf Stream and how Benjamin Franklin discovered the Gulf Stream, right? I remember Jack Mosier remembers what that is. He knew what a current was. Electric current is made by power plants, and it's sent all across the country along giant spider webs of thick, heavy wires called power lines. Power plants turn one kind of energy or power into another. Most of the power in the town is used from comes from hydroelectric power, and it turns falling water into electricity. So see, the water falls and it goes through this great big generator to make electricity. Billions of gallons of water from a lake above goes through the power plant, through the pipes as wide as a bus, and it spins. Let's learn about what it does. The pipes led to a row of machines called turbines inside of the power plant. The turbines were like fat metal wheels divided into sections by metal blades. As the water rushed down each pipe, it crashed against the blades and it made the turbine spin, the same way a revolving door spins when you push through. The water raced around the turbine and out the other side into a river, which tumbled away down the hillside. The water's job was done. All it had to do was make the turbine spin. As it spun, the turbine turned another wheel inside the machine called a generator. The generator was a wheel made of magnets, and magnets give out a special force called magnetism. When the magnets whirled around, their magnetism made an electric current move inside some metal bands, and the current flashed from the metal bands into the wires, which took it out of the power plant and into a transformer. Okay, I want to take a minute and show you a little mini generator. So This is a tiny little version of the generator we saw in the book. The water rushed through it and it turned the metal wheels, and this is just like the metal wheel. It's a little tiny metal rod. I'm going to use my fingers to spin it, and it's going to turn this generator, and it has all these little magnets inside of it, and that's going to create electricity, and that will flow through these wires and light the bulb. Are you ready? Let's count to 3. 1, 2, we'll say power. 1, 2, 3, power! So I'm using my energy to turn the rod, and that goes into the generator, makes electricity that flows through the wires and turns on the light. So after the generator, it goes into a transformer. The transformer's job was to give the current a boost so it could travel farther and farther along the power lines. Otherwise, it would gradually lose some of its strength and stop flowing. So that's just like if you play Mario Kart and Mario takes his cart over those yellow arrows that makes him zoom faster. The transformer is like that. It's like the electricity goes over the transformer and makes the power zoom out to all of the houses and buildings that use it. The current raced out of the transformer and into the power lines. They were lifted high above the ground on giant metal towers called pylons. These are pylons here. We see those when we drive or when you're walking around outside. Look for pylons. The pylons carry the lines away from the power station and across the countryside. Meanwhile, high up in the sky, the storm clouds billowed and tumbled. Fat drops of rain splashed down, but the clouds weren't only stuffed with raindrops, they had millions of ice crystals in them too. And they bumped each other. Inside the tumbling clouds, they pushed and they bumped and they bashed. As they bounced around, they began to build up energy. Before long, the clouds had so much energy that they couldn't hold on to it any longer. And crack! A blinding flash of light leaped across the sky. Lightning strikes in an instant and is even hotter than the surface of the sun. It's made by another type of electricity called static electricity. So, you could take a balloon and rub your hair, and if it's dry enough, your hair will start, you guys know, you'll start to stick to the balloon. You can kind of see my hair sticking. That's static electricity. It's kind of like a magnet in a way, right? Yeah. The lightning headed for the ground, but it didn't get there. Instead, it hit a power line. And remember, we learned about how Benjamin Franklin created those lightning rods, so lightning would have a high point to strike and keep us safe, right? The power line was carrying the current toward the town, and when the lightning hit it, everything came to a stop. The power went out. Has that ever happened to you? Your power's gone out in your house and you can't turn the lights on or use any of your computers, or the refrigerator turns off? Lights went out. Televisions and radios died. Ovens stopped cooking and computer screens went blank. It was as if someone had thrown a gigantic blanket over everything. It was a power failure. Far away at the control center, an alarm flashed on a computer screen. The alarm told the technicians there was a problem with one of the power lines, and the technicians guessed the storm was to blame. They knew they had to get the electricity back to the people in the town as quickly as possible. The team of technicians headed out to inspect the line. So see, they've taken their little van and they're going to inspect where the damage is so they can repair it and the power can flow again. The technicians knew the lightning must have sent a huge jolt of extra electricity into the power line, and the extra jolt of electricity had set off the alarm, and the safety switches at each end of the line had automatically turned the current off. Before the current could be switched back on again, the technicians had to make sure the line wasn't damaged. Luckily, the line was okay, thumbs up, and the switches were turned back on, and the current whizzed along again. Everything went back to normal, and the current flowed along the power lines until it reached the edges of town, and then it fed into another transformer. And this transformer made the current weaker, so it was safe for people to use, because too much electricity isn't good either. It can hurt people. Next, the current was split up and sent to different parts of the town, so it went into wires stretched between tall poles, and some of it went underground. The poles carried the current to a large factory on one side of the town and to a large farm on the other side of the town. And the current that went underground traveled along thick cables beneath the sidewalks and the roads that we go on. Some of the cables led to street lights and traffic lights. Others snaked off under paths and gates and yards and into the offices and stores and into the houses in town. Looks like people are turning on their lights with the electricity. Inside the houses, each cable led to an electricity meter. This meter shows how much electricity the house uses. And from the meter into another cable, the current is carried to a circuit breaker. And this works a little like the safety switches on the power lines too. If too much electricity goes into this, they switch off and then the electricity turns off. From the circuit breaker, wires spread out all over the place. They traveled under the floorboards and inside the walls and across the ceilings. They led to light switches and light bulbs and plugs. The plugs led to the heaters and hair dryers and toasters and televisions and telephones and refrigerators and washing machines and all of the things that we use every day because we have electricity. So the next time you reach over to turn on a switch, just think your switch is connecting you to the power plant that makes the electric current. The current is made stronger by the transformer. The current flows along the power lines called pylons. The transformer near town makes the current weaker and splits it up to all the different places we use electricity. Some current goes underground into cables. Some current goes into wires carried by poles, and poles carry current to farms, and underground cables carry current to the town and to the houses and schools. Thousands of feet of wires and hundreds of pylons and machines and people. It's bringing electricity all the way from the power plant to the light beside your bed. All in the time it takes to say, click. Turn on the switch and it clicks. So this is a circuit right here. A circuit is a circle and it connects something that uses power to power, and the power flows through these wires. We're going to talk more about circuits in our next video, and we're going to make a circuit with a potato. I can't wait. See you soon.